Great view. I'm super excited to be here. So I'm actually here to talk about scaling Atlassian applications for enterprises. So I'm excited to talk about how we do that and how the server and data center product teams have been working on numerous projects to help you do that. So now let's just talk about your experiences with Jira software and with Confluence. For many of you, these Atlassian products, they started out on an individual team or a department. So who remembers here the first Jira or Confluence server installed for your team? Anyone? Now, who's the person who actually installed it? Still here? Oh, bonus points, platinum points there. So I'm sure since then that your deployments have been growing a lot and growing rapidly since then. So in fact, we know that almost half of you have scaled up to higher tiers for Jira and Confluence in the last 3 years. So everyone's experiencing this growth. They're adding more users onto their applications. So now let's just talk about scaling as a concept in general. So what does scaling actually mean for your organization? So first, as you scale, there's more and more people that actually come on your team and different roles of people that come on your team. How do you ensure that they actually are still speaking to each other, collaborating, and working on the same project? Second, as you start to scale projects, the number of projects start to scale exponentially. There's a lot more complexity in the projects that you are working on. So how are you able to track all of your projects and get a view of everything going on in your organization? And then, of course, as you scale, there are more users that are added. And there's an increased load from your infrastructure. So how are you able to effectively manage that? So these are the 3 dimensions that we take a look at as we're thinking about scale across an organization. So now let's start by digging into roles and talking about how our products support you as the complexity of your team grows, as you add a different number of people and roles, and just as your team just gets bigger and bigger. So let's take a customer example, for example. So let's take Orbitz. Orbitz, I use it almost on a quarterly basis if I'm planning a vacation. It's used by millions of consumers, and they have many software teams to actually power Orbitz. They actually have 6 products across 7 brands. So imagine the number of teams that actually are supporting the development of software for these brands. And now if you look at the software teams on Orbitz, they're just not developers. They're actually developers, product managers, product marketers, content people, designers, and project managers. So how do you ensure that they work cross-functionally to actually keep up with their business demands and customer demands? And even though they all don't use the same tools, they all still need to know what's going on in their organization, and they all need to be on the same page. So if you have a small team, it's actually pretty easy to keep track of things. It's easy to keep track of who's working on what issues, the status of builds, the status of pull requests. But as you get a bigger team and more people are added onto your team, it's a little bit more of an overhead to actually keep track of everything. And so that's why integrated tools for teamwork is something that we think is very important to foster teamwork, drive communication, and save time, and ensure that the team is all on the same page. So this is integration between our tools. So for example, how many of you take advantage of the integration between Jira and Confluence? If you're in Confluence, you make a Jira issue, perfect. Saves me a ton of time. I'm sure it saves you a ton of time as well. So we've been focusing, in addition to that, of supporting the needs of software teams similar to Orbitz for Jira, Bitbucket, and Bamboo. And I want to dive into a few things that we've been doing. So, for example, it first starts with making information available, giving visibility of information to everyone on the team. So, everyone on the team is in Jira software. They're going to Jira software to plan and track their work. And so, if you make information visible from Bitbucket and Bamboo to the users in Jira software, they have access and visibility into that information. So, take an example of Jira's Issue Navigator. Now a team can get development status on multiple Jira issues in a single glance. This includes information on Git commits, pull requests on Bitbucket, and build information in Bamboo. In addition, so we're also working on development information in Jira Search. So say if you want to query all issues in a specific project that has commits, you can do this on JQL right now. This is going to be a huge time saver if you think about the combination and permutations of the queries that you can create in JQL. Not only that, your teams are going to be able to see your development status in working in the Jira boards. So as everyone goes into Jira in the morning, they're always interfacing with their boards at least a few times a day. They're able to actually see development status information in the board. It makes it easier for all the different roles that we just talked about on your teams to stay on the same page. And then your developers are able to spend a lot less time doing updates and doing status updates and spend more time building and improving products. So we're always looking at trying to improve the way to improve the flow for developers and minimize context switching. And you might know that you already can create a Bitbucket branch in Jira. But now with the release of Bitbucket, you can actually create a Jira issue directly from a pull request. So say during a code review, if your developer identifies a problem, instead of stopping the flow of work, taking down a note to actually identify the problem and put it into Jira a bit later, they can do it from Jira directly. It really limits context switching for developers. Customers taking advantage of these integrations have told us it leads to higher productivity, more issues closed, and just faster output in general. The integrations that we've spoken about, they really help teams to work cross-functionally and support different processes and methodologies, such as DevOps. So now working cross-functionally becomes even more important for DevOps if you're taking a look at all of the different pieces in the cycle of DevOps and the need for to have visibility and communication across all tools. Just a show of hands, how many of you are adopting DevOps, thinking about DevOps, or planning to adopt DevOps? Good number of you on that cutting edge? Great. So we know that multiple tools are used by teams to support their DevOps processes, and all of these tools, they're not Atlassian tools. So we actually have the world's biggest DevOps marketplace. There's 200 add-ons and integrations that enable teams to extend and custom-fit Atlassian tools and processes to their workflow. And we're also committed to directly integrating popular tools that you use. So we know that some of you are using Jenkins for continuous integration, and you've asked for a tighter integration with Bitbucket. And we're excited to announce that we're currently developing a native Jenkins integration with Bitbucket. So very similar to Bitbucket's integration with Bamboo, there's out-of-the-box support for triggering builds in Jenkins on creating a pull request, viewing build status in Bitbucket. So now your developers are going to have a lot more control of the time that their builds kick off, and they can actually monitor progress right from inside Bitbucket. So these are some of our investments that are helping different roles collaborate and work efficiently at scale. Now, I want to talk about projects. So many of you are benefiting from Jira to support your agile practices, but with more users come more projects. Let's take a customer example again. ABN AMRO, it's one of the biggest banks in the Netherlands. They grew from 100 to 7,000 Jira software users within a year and a half, so within 18 months. So now you can only imagine the number of projects that they need to track now. So this growth actually made it challenging for the organizations to align the work within teams. I mean, if you're growing from 100 users to 7,000, that's just a lot. But they still wanted to ensure that their teams are getting all of the benefits of working Agile with Jira. So they really wanted a more effective way to scale their Agile practices. And for that, they're using Portfolio for Jira. So what Portfolio does is it helps you create a plan from multiple Jira boards. And often a program, it actually is consisting of multiple plans. So say if you have a program for a digital platform, there might be plans from your platform group, your mobile group, your marketing group, and your web group. So how are you going to get visibility across all of these plans? And that's where programs for Portfolio for Jira come into play. And basically what you get is an aggregated view across multiple plans. And this ensures that you and your management team get visibility and align on resources and timelines across multiple plans. This is a very a snapshot view that helps you determine this very quickly. Now we know that planning starts much before you've created and fleshed out a Jira board. I tend to think that planning process tend to take about 3 months, and you spend maybe 2 months doing a lot of the really meaty planning. In that early planning phase, you simply don't have all of the information to actually plan the full scope of the project. You don't know all of the resources, but you still need a roadmap or you need a plan to kind of guide and direct you. To address this, for Portfolio for Jira, we're working on a refreshed user experience that has a focus on adding capabilities to enable you to actually visualize your epics and your stories much earlier in the planning cycle. So what does this look like? So we now have a drag and drop experience. So you can actually start planning all of your epics further out by creating end dates in Portfolio. And you can do this manually. And then if plans change and you start to add different things, all you have to do is drag the epic over, and your story is going to move totally all with it. And you can start building out a roadmap in Portfolio much earlier in the planning cycle to actually guide you. So helping you get visibility at a program level and supporting planning a lot earlier in the process are just a couple of ways that we're helping you scale your Agile practices as your number of projects grow in your organization. Now let's talk about users and talk about how we're supporting you in the growth of the users and the resulting stress and the load on your infrastructure. So now we've seen single instances grow to as many as hundreds of thousands of users. This is just an example of 200,000 users on a single Confluence instance. We've seen customers like LinkedIn grow to up to 3 million Jira issues in a single instance. So if you're thinking about this scale and this number, 200,000, 3 million, just think about the type of load that this puts on your infrastructure. And while all of you are not growing to this scale at this moment yet, I'm sure that you've experienced some type of growth in your Atlassian applications and with your users. So the scaling actually creates new demand, not just on application infrastructure, but on many of you who are responsible for the health and the management of these applications. It becomes even more important to ensure that these applications deliver high uptime, business continuity, consistent performance at scale, and centralized control so your admins can actually scale well. And that's why we built our data center products. And I know you just heard about a few spoilers during the keynote in where Jay talked about Confluence, the read-only mode that supports you in improving uptime to your end users. I want to talk about a few more areas and double-click into some things that we're investing in that are going to help you deal with the increasing demands of your infrastructure. So for many of you have a growing number of instances of all of our products. And with this growth, you might want to consolidate multiple server instances into a single data center so you can manage your infrastructure centrally. This does require careful planning and execution. So with Jira Software, there's already working with a couple partners to enhance our tools and provide guidance on how to best consolidate multiple instances. And I want to talk about for Bitbucket, something that we're working on is creating a built-in capability that migrates the repositories from multiple Bitbucket servers to data center. And you still preserve your metadata, your users, and your timestamps of existing projects and your repos. Another area that we want to focus on scaling is the administration of our products. As you're growing with users and teams, the admin is increasingly becoming pressured and potentially could be the bottleneck as there's different requests coming forward from different users. At the keynote, Jay talked about some of the features to centralize the administration and make it and give some of that ability to others to reduce the reliance on the central admin. And we're actually looking at new ways to provide a more streamlined experience for the admin. How many of you are using Crowd today? Are familiar with Crowd? Okay, a little portion of you. So almost half of our data center customers, they are using Crowd today for centralized user and identity management across all of their Atlassian applications. And we're investing in Crowd to help the admin scale more efficiently. The most common use case is with group administration. So once a group is set up, the admin wants to hand off some responsibilities for group permissions to whomever is responsible for that group. So we're adding this capability in Crowd, and I'm going to show you how it works. So in this case, the admin has created a group for Confluence users, and they had assigned the administration of the group to a team member, in this case, Lou. So now Lou has all the power to add and delete as many team members as possible. So now, if the users need to be added or removed from the group, basically Lou can simply go into Crowd, doesn't have to bother the admin, and do it himself. And of course, with Crowd, if you're changing these group permissions, these actually then propagate across Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, and your other Atlassian applications that are connected to Crowd. So this is an example of a less place in where the admin is going to be a bottleneck or has to deal with these requests. I want to talk about app monitoring for a second. So with increased users come increased stress and load on your products. And a heavy load doesn't just impact the product, but the apps that are actually on them. So an app could work very well in a small instance, but it might not work as well if you're experiencing heavy load on your infrastructure. So one app could actually end up causing a slowdown for all of your users. So to help you manage this, the product team is working on building up a built-in app monitoring feature. So what this does is it really detects app behavior that can actually impact the stability and performance. And so there's proactive notifications that go to the admin if they see anything kind of interesting going on in the product. So if they see scheduled tasks, transactions taking a bit too long, they're able to send a proactive notification to the admin, so then the admin can take the necessary actions. So Bitbucket now is working on this currently, and the other products are going to build on this capability. Now, let's talk about maintaining performance in Jira. There's a bit of a spoiler in the keynote on this. So as your Jira instance grows, you have projects from probably many years ago, but they're actually still in your database. And over time, these add an unnecessary load on operations such as indexing and can create serious performance impact scenarios for both the admin and also the end user as well. And so as we speak to you guys and customers, to manage the growth in this data is one of the most frequent conversations that I have with customers. And this is part of a reason that we're bringing project archiving to Jira. So now when you have projects that are not running any longer, older projects, there's the ability to actually close these projects. So what this does is it removes projects and issues from the Jira index, but not from storage. But by removing projects from the index, the end users don't get as much clutter. The index becomes a bit lighter, which means a faster search and querying experience, and your cluster operations actually speeds up as well. But the great thing is that you can actually go and restore these closed projects. So you don't have to do any offline backups or strange workarounds to get you to actually delete these projects and these issues. The focus for this capability at this moment is to improve performance. It isn't a compliance feature at this time, but we're looking at extending this into the future. So I'm excited to share that the Jira team has started working on this and are going to be providing you with updates in the near future as well. So this is a sampling of our investments in both server and data center products to help you manage scale, no matter how scale is manifesting in your organization. But in addition to project enhancements, you've also told us that scale and complexity of deployments, upgrading to a new release can be a major initiative that requires significant planning. So we're trying to help you do this by doing a couple things. First, communication's a big thing. So we've committed to doing a webinar series for enterprise and product a couple times a year. And this is an opportunity for us to share upcoming focus areas that we're doing and innovations, so you know what's coming and you can actually plan accordingly. And second, enterprise releases. So the concept behind this is an enterprise release, it's a feature release that you know that you'll get the critical security and stability throughout a supported window, so you don't have to constantly upgrade to the latest version to get fixes. And so this is going to happen for Jira Software, Jira Service Desk, Confluence, and our data center products. And this is going to happen about once a year. Confluence, they released an enterprise release about a month ago, and Jira Software is doing theirs at this point right now as well. So hopefully both of these things help you plan your upgrades better and simplifies the life of your maintenance team. And finally, I just want to end with that we recognize that scaling and adopting an open teamwork practices and tools is a journey for your company. Scaling in general is a journey from A to Z. And we're excited to be on this journey with you, and we're very committed to investing in our server and our data center products to help make this journey smooth. So keep your feedback coming. I look forward to speaking to you at the breaks and at the networking session, and thank you for your time.